Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. This is Frame of View. I'm your host, Parson Brown. Today we are joined with Joe Fronk. He is a feature TV agent. We're coming to you from Los Angeles in our sequestered state. And we just want to make sure that everybody's doing all right. Reach out to folks. And today we're going to talk to Joe about what he does as an agent and where the film and entertainment industry is headed moving forward. So, Joe, how you doing, man? How you holding up? Are you safe and healthy?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for so much. Thanks so much, guys, for having me on
Of course.
as onto your show, and thank you for asking. Doing well. We're doing well here, kind of in our lockdown. How are you guys doing? Doing well as well. I think you put it best, sequestered in our respective
We're
locations.
doing the best we can. I happened to end up sequestered in an in-house studio, so with a handful of friends who all work in the entertainment industry, and we don't really know what else to do other than to create content. So this is how we're doing it. This is how we're surviving. But
That's
yeah, no, that's
fantastic.
good. That's
You
good.
know, that's music to an agent's ears. Let me put it that way.
Uh,
Content being created. Again, for sure.
so if you don't mind, like explain a little bit about, you know, who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I'm a feature and TV agent in the literary space. I also work with below the line clients at the talent agency Artistry, which is a below the line boutique talent agency that represents cinematographers, directors of photography, costume designers, production designers, editors, and more recently, writers, and hoping to expand in the literary space as well. And that's was part of the agency's effort in bringing me on, as I had run mostly a literary representation business at Island Park Entertainment, which is the management and production company I started prior to joining Artistry in early March of this year. So I represent writers, directors, and also technically below the line clients. So I'm getting to know their list of wonderful clients as well. So it's been a great experience.
Great, yeah, very interesting and really essential work here in Los Angeles. Could you, for folks that maybe don't work in the movie industry, maybe explain what specifically, like what is the practice of the work that you do and the steps that you go through, so that people understand.
Right. Yeah, of course. So, I think the public image that a lot of people have with Hollywood is of an agent, of an actor's agent. And that actor's agent's job is to find and book them work, different acting roles throughout their career. Well, for a literary agent, representing writers and also directors, and um, it's the exact same thing. It's to go out and find a writer a job. And that can involve finding them an existing job, an assignment, or part of a writer's room. So a lot of all these shows that you see on TV are uh, almost always, if not every show, has a writer's room, a writer's staff. So finding writers' slots on those shows, or whether it's creating a show, or developing a show, or a client creates a show, going out and pitching that into the market, to the studios and networks for developing material as well. So there are different ways in which a literary agent can find work for a writer. And for me, that's one of the many things that excites me about the work. And I appreciate you saying what you mentioning that, in your opinion, the essential work of writers and content creators. And I appreciate that sentiment, because I think what we do is important, and what writers do and content creators very much helps us increasingly, I think, get through this time. It would be very interesting to imagine the great pandemic, or I said, pending whatever we're going to be calling it 10, 20, 30 years from now, of 2020 without Zoom or without FaceTime technology. It's pretty remarkable to consider. So I do feel very
Yeah,
fortunate. And
connecting with people has I've can only imagine what this situation would be like if we, you know, I think back in history, I know that humanity has dealt with similar situations and worse, but
Right.
I know that we're spoiled, but I think about how much crazier I would feel if I wasn't able to connect with people via technology.
Right. Right.
So you're able to work from home right now, which is good, right?
I am able to work from home, fortunately, and I'm absolutely it is not lost on me that I am in a position that am fortunately able to do that. I think what's interesting is that we're going to continue to see a lot of companies and technologies, as many have been forced into this work from home environment. I think personally it will be interesting to see which companies adapt and how they adapt to this kind of remote work situation. In Hollywood, very much a lot of companies were, I don't want to say, well, forced, yes, certainly forced, but perhaps a better word would be rushed into the virtual era of working from home. So
Absolutely.
I think it's going to require, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But again, I do feel very fortunate to be in a position where a lot of our work is done on the phone and through email and can still be done in that way. But I think as we now, I don't know if there will be a normal to go back to, but as we kind of come back out of our houses again, it will be interesting to see how this all works out.
Yeah,
And I think,
definitely.
frankly, it's a little too early to tell at this very moment,
Oh, for sure. We get a
unfortunately.
different sense of things, it seems, every day, sometimes by the hour.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, in terms of the work that you do, and considering the delicate state of the industry right now, how does that, if your job is to find work for folks in an industry that is, we are all basically either furloughed or laid off or just, on the shows that I normally work on are on hiatus.
Right.
So how's that impacting your clients and how you do your job?
No, it's a great question. And personally, it's one that I still seek to answer every day. In a way, I ask myself the same question. How is this going to, outside of the thoughts of, is everyone I know okay? And how's, that stuff when it comes to the work, I do think about development. And more recently, as different states have sort of begun to release their guidelines on what a safe set is going to look like, as a literary agent, I think naturally I begin to think about how that is going to affect development and type of material that we're putting out into the world. And you know that's the $1 million question. And I think that we'll see. I think to an extent, you're seeing programming that is able to go on without too much of an interruption. The nightly news, the late shows. I think I applaud all of the industry creatives who so quickly responded to this situation by and the hosts themselves by rushing, getting that studio, that
Yeah.
remote studio set up and continuing to entertain their fans every night. I think has been a remarkable thing to see. And then you also have the side of the industry that's the scripted entertainment side, where we're going to go, okay, are we going to, do we need absolute need to the point of literal life and death and 100% safety and all of that and liability? Do we absolutely need 150 extras when it was before it
Mm.
was just trying to keep a production on its day on budget to avoid a scream or or a that phone call from the network?
Right.
Now it's a serious liability question. So I think a lot of my hope is that the industry, and I think from what I'm reading and what I'm understanding, the industry is by and large doing a great job of listening to the scientists, forming advisory committees, working with local city and state officials at all levels to try and make sure that when people do go back into production, it's a safe experience, because the last thing that I think any industry needs right now is a second wave of death
Oh
and
yeah,
infection.
definitely. And it seems to be, it's impacting every locality, every geographically, every community differently, and every industry in a
Absolutely.
unique way. Going back a little bit, you were mentioning there's so many of live shows, the news, the daytime television, the late shows, and things like that. They're mostly doing that from remotely. And
Right.
one thing that I noticed that is probably apparent to you and certainly your clients is that you can. It's interesting to see how folks that are television personality professionals having to do their own lighting,
Right.
set up their own camera angles, and do their own hair and makeup, and who's,
Right.
those essential, those are truly essential things that you notice when those people aren't able to be in the building.
Right. That's a really interesting thing that you pointed out. And for me, it's been very interesting as a fan of all of these hosts. Really, I think they're all quite funny, the late night shows, without singling out any one of them. But
Right.
it's been interesting to witness the speed of evolution. I think, without wanting or needing to point out a certain show for how quickly they adapted, but just personally observing those things. But again, by and large, I think I think they've done a great job of getting people to air. And I'll be honest, there have been several nights where, and maybe more recently than last, where I was brought to tears, and just from some of the jokes that were going on. And I remember thinking to myself, that's a good sign if I'm being brought to tears and laughter,
Yeah. Well, it's important, and
without all this effects and the crowd that they usually have. I think it's a real sign of the host talent, actually, that's on display, and to not to minimize all of the ancillary work that goes into a
of
production.
course.
But like you said, I think we're noticing these things that we wouldn't normally notice, and I think that is among many ways in which a lot of industries and sectors of industry are getting recognized in a way that uh, they haven't before, and I think that that's important.
Yeah.
So that's been cool to see for sure.
So in general, um, yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. Overall, how do you, what's your sense of what's the morale of your clients and folks that are in those particular jobs? I know that some of there's people in this building where I am that uh, you know do those jobs professionally, and there's some of us aren't really sure when we're going to be able to go back to work. How are your clients feeling? What's the vibe?
I think that I can say with confidence that there is a general anxiety across Hollywood right now, an uncertainty of what things will look like. But I think there is uh, certainly, perhaps more for writer clients, things may not be physically too different. But again, I think for everyone, there does seem to be a concern of, because this is, I think, much larger than any one industry. But I guess if I could characterize my answer to your question, would be it is, in a sense, it almost feels like there is a greater responsibility, almost. I think, if I may, in creating the content that we do and selling it. I think that this is a world, and, well, a nation
Yeah.
in which we've lost some 60,000 people at least, in the month of April alone. And so I think that writers and actors and talent of all caliber and all types of experience are getting an opportunity through this technology to share their talent with other people. And that's always, I think, been a goal of a writer, of a creator, is to use your talents to connect with other people. And we're seeing, I think, this massive global need for that right now in a way that we haven't ever seen before. So in that regard, I think it can be an inspiring moment for people. to see that their work is valued, is essential, can be deemed essential. And I think that is and should be inspiring for a lot of creatives,
Yeah,
not just writers, but all types of content creators.
definitely. That's to a smaller degree, that's why we built this set and started doing this, because
Absolutely.
as a creative professional, you feel that that obligation to continue to entertain, to tell stories, to share news, whatever your niche may be.
Right.
So yeah, we feel you on that. Um,
I love to hear it.
yeah, well, so in general, well, actually, like, I guess what I really wanted to ask you is, so we've, and it's a beautiful thing how people have adapted and quickly evolved to be able to do this remote production process. And people are,
Right.
there's a learning curve. When we, when and if we are allowed to go back to normal,
Right.
I've been doing some research, and it sounds like every day on a film set is going to be completely different. So after
Yeah.
we're through learning how to do this remote production, the standard procedures on most film sets is also going to change.
Very, very
How do you see
much.
that? What its impact might be on the industry?
Yeah, well, I think that that's again, that's a huge, it's kind of the $1 million question. I noticed last week, and this would be the week of last week would have been, or when, as of this recording, this previous Friday was Friday, May 1st. I saw that the state of Florida released their guidelines, and it's a lot. I mean, when you think about any film or TV production, well, you think about all the background performers and how important they can be to any given shot. Hair and makeup.
Of course.
You've got people coming in and touching actors' faces. What's that going to look like? Craft services is, from from everything from all the accounts that I've read, is history, is a thing of the past, and that's basically where they put out lunch, and it's all this different cuisine. I mean, so there's going to be a pretty drastic, I think, change to how we approach production. However, I think it will be a testament to the smarts and innovation of the industry to make sure that we can continue to tell stories in the way that we want to tell them, uh, without compromising safety of everyone involved. And that, you know, goes from pre-production to development. I think that this is obviously going to affect everything from screenings, test screenings, to premieres, to everything that we do. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
staggering when you kind of take a step back and think about what a production could be forced to look like,
And folks
given
don't
everything that's going
realize
on.
how many different parts and how many other
Right,
businesses and
right.
different industries are involved, in coalition when you put together a television or film production.
Absolutely.
So
I mean,
moving on
you
into
see an effect on cities when productions don't go. I mean, when we saw the South by Southwest cancellation, or however, that's the word, cancellation, and you saw the effect on the industry almost immediately.
yeah,
And that was just the result of the announcement of the festival's closure. I think the most recent news of considerable weight was that the Academy is changing its rules, I think, for Best Picture nominee. They're changing that theatrical window requirement or prerequisite, which I think is pretty significant. How that will affect, or open up the competition in any way, I don't know. I think it's too early
how
to
are they
tell on that,
changing
or
it?
I'm not as informed. And what was the question?
How exactly are they changing?
So I can't speak to the exact change or what the modification has been, but traditionally, for a film to be nominated for Best Picture, it has to be exhibited in a certain number of screens. The numbers, it's not the
Uh,
3,500. It's not like the wide release, but it has to cross a certain threshold it may even be closer to like a week, or like a week of release in a major city, or and that's, nobody quote me on that, but it was formerly something along that lines, and now with the pandemic and the obvious hit and adjustments that studios and exhibitors and cinemas globally are having to make, I believe, well, what I read recently was that the Academy has made an adjustment to that prerequisite of having a film having needed to be screened in X number of screens, X number of days. So
Right.
that's another interesting thing that I think we'll see. I also do think it's too early to tell. Will that open up the competition, or does that just kind of make it so that the same studio films are going to be nominated? Too early to tell, I think. But
Yeah. No, that's an interesting.
that's another interesting change, I think,
Yeah,
that
it's a
we'll see.
frame of view that I hadn't really thought of.
I
Yeah.
hadn't thought too much about it either, but I remember reading an article about it briefly and seeing that. So again, in a way, it seems like that could open up the door or the window, pun intended, I think, for competition for the
Yeah.
Academy
No,
Awards. I
it
mean,
could change the
maybe
game.
it could be 20 years from now that and who knows? You know, this feels very kind of almost dystopian. Maybe it is an online open submission thing, and that, so you kind of think about that and the prospects of what competitive filmmaking, which I don't think I've ever even heard those two words together, nor should I. But when you think about the competition for Academy Awards, and it could be very interesting. And I think that there will be a lot of Oscars aside, there will be a lot of interesting ways for content creators to spring into action.
Oh, I
Yeah.
totally agree. So,
Yeah.
um, in your line of work, so when you're assessing a potential client, because I'm sure folks are always seeking you out, but when you're, you know, vetting someone to pick up as a client, what kind of attributes do you look for, whether they be, you know, specifically a writer or a director of photography, et cetera? What kind of things do you
Yeah.
look for, and do you think that those qualities will change as the industry is taking this cultural turn as well?
You know, to answer your question, my hope is not. Ultimately, if I decide to bring someone on or represent somebody, for me, it's always kind of just been a feeling of when I meet somebody, or if I read them and I get to meet them, or a lot of it for me has to very much do with attitude and heart. And is this person going to go the distance with or without me? I mean, is this person going to never give up, basically? And you can't write that. You know, that's an attitude, I think, that you just have to have. Of course, talent has a lot to do with it, but um, I look for a lot of heart. I got a chance to meet a famous actress and singer once, and she told me to follow your heart, believe in yourself, and go for it. That was her advice. Actually,
Great advice.
she cameos actually in a new Netflix limited series that was released on Friday. That's
Awesome.
not too far off from the subject matter. So for anyone that pays close enough attention, you'll be able to put two and two together there, or if they watch both. But she said to follow your heart, believe in yourself, and go for it. So that's kind of that spirit and attitude. And there is so much talent out there, and there is so much. So for me, I'm always and getting into the more substantive answer, part of the answer to your question is, you know, I'm looking for people that are able to tell a story from beginning, you know, from start to finish. And a big part of storytelling is connecting with the audience, with the reader. You know, are you writing a scene that is going to, you know, show not tell is a very real thing. Show us this scene and how it's unfolding. Show how these characters are feeling. Don't just tell us.
Right.
And so writing that can really make a reader feel something, and that may seem a little cliche or a little obvious, but that tends to get my attention more so than others. But I think there are, and that's another interesting thing to me is kind of source material. Do you have an interesting story to tell? And I think that you can find a million different ways to tell a story, but what's the way that hasn't been told yet? What's the angle in? What's the way that no one else has thought about into telling this story? Why is it important? And especially in series, and what's the big idea? What and for features, same. What's the big idea when you walk out of that theater? What do you want me asking myself when I walk out of the movie? Every time an episode ends, how should I be feeling? And if you can get anyone that's reading a screenplay to feel some type of way, that's a good sign. So, but also I think very much is that mental, is this person going to just not ever quit? And for me, I kind of, that's my attitude, is I'm just not going to quit. So is this person going to still be there, not quitting alongside me when we're facing the ups and downs that I think anyone with a career in entertainment faces?
Sure.
Inevitably.
Yeah. So it sounds, maybe sum it up as you look for somebody who sees the world through a very unique and special lens. That's
or can write that way. A person can be as boring as they want to be in person, and if that's and if he or she or they and they want to hand me a script and say this is
right.
what I write.
Yeah, this could be a revolution for introverts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a really cool, in that way, it's an interesting time to go, well, I know we're all stuck at home. Why don't you check this out or watch this or read this? And so in that way, there is an excitement almost about, I think, what has been an amplified spotlight a little bit.
Yeah. So you've been working in the industry for a while now, but so tell me a little bit about your background. You didn't start out as an agent. So where have you been and how'd you get here?
So I technically actually started as an actor when I was 11 or so. I was in a Pokemon commercial, commercial
That's
for
fun.
Pokemon trading cards. And so I actually, from a young age, wanted to work in Hollywood. And I first did so as an actor, and I did some theater on Mercer Island, where I grew up in Seattle, Youth Theater Northwest, shout out. And so, but when after college and when I got a little bit older, I realized that I had very much an interest in the business side of things. So I actually did technically start my career in representation. I started at United Talent Agency in Beverly Hills and began there as a mailroom floater or a mailroom trainee as part of the agent trainee program. And so we would
right from the bottom.
Actually, believe it or not, right straight from the bottom. I remember. In fact, I think one of my first ever driving errands, is what we called them back in the day, was, I think I can't say the actor's name, I don't think, but I was delivering water or something because it was a very famous actor, to this actor's house in Malibu. It was my first ever time to Malibu, and I'll never forget it because I went back on the way home and I got a Subway sandwich with a buddy, and we came out to a nice big parking ticket in Malibu. Because I was parked in the wrong part of the parking lot, apparently. So that was a good story. But quite started.
A lot
from the
of
bottom,
us have been there.
Yeah, going out and then making the runs and just showing up on some random person's door with a delivery. And
when you're trying to work your way up, you get a lot of bizarre and sometimes seemingly impossible requests, but you've got to make it happen.
Yes. Well, is it done? Is the task done? And as I've gotten older and I've gotten a chance, the opportunity to see all the nuances that goes into the work, it certainly makes my memory of those things less completely random. When you're 23 or 24 and someone's like, "Here, I need you to take this to Malibu," and you're given this assignment, and it seems like it's the most important thing at the world at the time. But at the time, it is, because it's, did you get this done? Yes or no?
Yeah,
So,
no, exactly.
I kind of came up that traditional way, but I also got a chance to work in physical production as well, and I got a chance to work on different sets in film and TV, and I think I'd like to think earned or learned how to have a newfound respect for all the crew members of a production. I can tell you
I feel you on
on a
that
certain
one.
take, it's like, if you're a background actor and you're wearing a certain tie and that's in the background of a shot and they're back from lunch, it's pretty amazing how quickly a 300 to 400 person production can halt on a dime if the guy with the red bow tie is messing around at craft services. It's amazing how quickly these productions can shut down. So I say that really because it's just a testament to the entirety of a production.
Right.
And I think, like you pointed out earlier, we're seeing different ways and noticing kind of things that we wouldn't have noticed before about all of this work, this
Yeah.
essential work
Well, that's a
for
really
production.
great quality for an agent to have, is to have dipped your toe in, so to speak, and had experience with people, in all different departments, different levels. Because I know in my own personal experience, I've worn a lot of different hats over the years, and I know, that there's different struggles that go along with different type of work. I know how I don't want to be treated, and so I always try to
Right.
keep that in mind. So that's got to be something that's definitely useful in your line of work.
It,
So,
it is. It has been.
um,
That's an important perspective, I think.
yeah,
That just personally, not to say that I don't. There are plenty of terrific agents out there who have never worked on the other side of the table, but just me individually, I got a chance to see that perspective, and I think it's helped me relate to different clients and different projects or executives
yeah.
in different ways. So it's
Knowing
been
what
important.
happens when you're on the front lines, when you're, the groundwork
Yeah,
is definitely useful. I can imagine, especially when you're, you know, trying to place somebody in the right job, in the right environment for them.
yeah, and just having I think a broader understanding of the scale and scope of things, and again, it goes back to, is this person going to be here, not quitting when the going gets tough? When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Right.
So is this person tough, and are they going to get going when the going gets tough with me? And so but and I see people rising to that challenge, every day through this. So it's been very inspiring.
For sure. So, for sure, right now, as we've stated, things are different than they have been. As you're looking towards the future, as everybody is, like, I'm thinking of people that maybe they're young, maybe they're not, but there's constantly folks coming to coming to LA. They make the move to Hollywood and they want to make it. I would normally ask you, what are the types of things, like what is your advice for somebody first coming to the city and getting into the industry? But the second part of the question, because of the circumstances that we're in, is what would you do in this day and age, like this particular uh, pandemic situation? I just think of folks that I know that have packed everything into their cars just to get out here in time for everything to shut down.
Right.
So I don't know
Right.
what would.
Well, to answer your question, I think it goes back to the same thing. Is it's are if someone were to tell you right now that in 10 years, so you just get here, if someone were to tell you in 10 years you're going to still be doing this day job, but I can tell you that in 15 years, if you stick through it, you're going to have made it. Are you okay doing this other stuff for 15 years and struggling? So it's kind of the same question. However, I do think that there will be more opportunities for, I guess, more broadly speaking, the participation in Hollywood, and a lot of this remains to be seen, but virtually. And I think we were beginning to see that with casting in terms of how actors have been able to self-tape, right, with their iPhones and send things in to casting directors. It will be interesting to see now if, how much of that will change in this era. Are people on different sides of the country, are there going to be different units of production that stay on one side of the country? And they should, so it'll be very interesting.
Right.
But to answer the question more specifically is, are you going to never give up? Because this is a very tough business. And B, well, the first question is, can you afford a place to live, right? Of course.
Oh,
but
yeah. Bottom line.
It goes back to that. It goes back to that mental toughness, are you going to be willing to do what other people won't, to have and achieve what other people don't? Is another kind of saying that I like to say. So I think pre, during, and or post pandemic, I think it's mental toughness. I think that will get people to the finish line. But there's now an obvious change that's going to happen in the way that we film things. And I think one aspect of survival for a lot of people and things is adaptability. And so how quickly can we all adapt to this new world will also be a huge factor, I think.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be an influx in animation, voice work, things like that? Because those seem to be like the first level of stuff that could really be facilitated remotely.
Yeah, I think we could. I think that's, again, a little bit too early to tell on a bigger scale if we're going to see more or less animation. But one thing that might be interesting is we might get more star names to animation. Maybe that, and I'm just throwing that up as something that could happen. I'm not quite sure. I think it'll be interesting. But at some point, if this virus does continue to be the physical threat that it seems to be presenting itself as, it feels like that's something that could happen. Absolutely. Just by virtue of the existential threat to live action production. But again, I think it's too early to tell. Science could come on stage next week and tell us something else, something different that changes everything. So very much stay tuned, I think.
It's a challenge that, every is impacting everybody. Everyone is facing the same challenge, like testing our creativity to, there's a whole city of wonderfully creative people that have to be extra creative to figure out how to
extract it all, keep connected. It's pretty important.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Is there anything else? Anything else, man, that's important to you?
Just everyone take care. Take care of each other and themselves. That's the only message that I would have. I don't think my message is unique to kind of the message, but I think this is an important time to take care of each other and take care of ourselves and the people we love and those we're close with and those we're not. I think that's going to be really important.
So what are you doing for fun? I mean, before we go, tell me something that you're doing for fun.
So I watch TV shows for fun. There's a couple new shows that I'm enjoying.
Any new hobbies that you picked up?
Yes, guitar, actually.
Nice.
I'm teaching myself how to play guitar. So that's been a hobby that I took up actually kind of just before I don't know if I can say before the pandemic began, before the domestic response to the pandemic began. I had started doing that. So that's one thing that I perhaps have a bit more time to do that I'm enjoying. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and I would be doing a huge disservice to our awesome city if I didn't ask you to turn around and show us the hat that you're rocking.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You know, I will
Represent.
always be a Seattle sports guy. I hope it's, sorry, Mariners. I love this color. And the city, though. I've been 10 years now in LA, so I think I've
Yeah,
hopefully
it's great.
earned the right to wear the LA hat. So near mine.
Absolutely. Well, man, thanks so much. Keep in touch with us, and
Yes. Thank you
wishing
guys for
you
having me.
and your people all the best. And
Thank you. Likewise.
hopefully we'll you know, cross paths again, trying to figure out
Yeah.
what we're gonna do next.
Yeah. Would love to stay connected. So be well, and thanks again for having me.
You too. Keep up the good work. Thanks for watching Frame of View. I'm your host, Parson Brown. That was our conversation with a feature TV agent here in Los Angeles, California. Make sure to subscribe and ring our bell so that you get notified the next time that we have a conversation with an incredible human being. Thank you for joining us on The Frame of View.